everything on the stage. When you see me, you're going to want to come back.
What gets you to that stage? Because, for some people, when they go out and they perform, they either connect for their kids, they connect to a loved one, they connect to, like I said, a loved one.
Right.
What is it exactly that you draw in from? Where does that energy come from?
I come from my background, where I grew up, that raw energy, that's just where it comes from. That's just who I am. I grew up a certain way, so I think
grew up in New Haven?
Yep, New Haven, Church Street South.
Oh, okay. Oh,
so, yeah.
That's right. I did see you post something about the
that's
PJs.
Right. And that's actually the name of the project.
Okay. That's right. That's right.
Right. So I just think growing up down there, you have certain experiences, and that kind of becomes a part of you, and that's part of who I am. Also, the music, depending on the song, I think I tap into whatever the song is. I'm trying to convey that message. So if it's a Let's Stay Together, then I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you, what the song is trying to say.
Let me ask you a question now. Let me put this together, because I'm quite sure there are listeners out there who wants to know this. Here at Church Street South, first thing you think is 5 guns and a machete. Come on, let's keep it ugly, man. Let's keep it ugly. No, that ain't keeping it. That ain't stupid. That's real, man. Here at Church Street South, especially in the 80s and 90s. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You think of stacking guns.
Right.
Now you came from that environment.
Right.
So where's all this love part come on from, man?
Listen,
put away the guns and start hugging? What the hell?
Listen, man. Gangsters need love too.
He just shanked me. I'm just shanked.
Nah, you know what? I'll say this, man. I'll say this. Yes, there was definitely reputation is real, but I'll also say this: there's a lot of good people down there.
And that's what I wanted to hear,
it's
sir.
A
Thank you so
lot
much.
of good people.
Thank you so much.
That's an extension of my family. Like those are
Thank
people.
you so much for that.
Those people helped make me the man that I am today, and those experiences as well. I got lifelong friends, families, brothers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I lost a few, but
Yeah.
a lot of them are still here.
Right.
And those stand-up dudes, stand-up women.
Yeah.
It was a community.
Oh, heck yeah, it was.
It was a community,
I know
regardless of what
real
everybody
good.
else thought.
Oh, no,
it's
I
a
was
community.
all up in them projects
Right.
back in the day, man.
Right.
So come on, man.
Right.
What?
Right.
Shoot. Do you remember Danny Williams used to live on Church Street itself?
Yes.
That was one of my running dudes, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Jonesy, all them boys.
Good people.
Come on, man.
Good
For real.
people.
So shout outs to the people out there from Church Street South. Man, you just give me a flashback, man. I just pause, Joe.
Greatest era ever.
Great, but I ain't gonna say all that. Excuse me, New Orleans, huh?
Greatest era ever.
I hear you, man. Patriarch Recordings is where you stand right now. Your project. This is your last 3 projects, I believe. It's on Patriarch.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not here, so you could tell me about it. How's the label treating you, man?
The label is amazing. And I ain't just saying that because I'm tuning in either. You already know. I'm somebody that doesn't trust many people. It's just not how I'm wired. I'm not built like that. So when I initially signed with them, you're like, okay, this going to work out. They really going to look out for you. They really going to do their part. It's been more than expected. Stand-up dudes all the way around. It's the team. It's the family. They have my best interest at heart always, and always trying to push for greater and push for better and never become complacent and stagnant and all of that. You know what I mean? Always moving forward.
I saw you did this video, and it was in New York, the New York setting.
Yeah.
And I was trying to wrap my head around, even when you were here before and you told me, and I still can wrap my head around, why the New York setting? Because you know how New Haven people feel about when they see artists go to New York. Right. What is that?
The culture. I think it was just the diversity of the park. The culture was there. You know what I mean? I wanted to capture that in the song. I wanted the song to reach a broader audience. So I'm like, this is the perfect place to shoot it. Now, it's a little bit of everybody out here.
That's awesome. Because the reason why I highlight that is because people tend to think, as soon as they see you in another city, they tend to think, oh, you're giving up New Haven.
Never.
Because we had that experience here in the city of New Haven, and people never forgot that, and they still think, but you still embrace New Haven strong. What are you talking about, Church Street South? You actually named your project Church Street South, right? So you see, I have all, I can ask you all the stuff that, goes with a good bio and all that stuff. Right. And you know what? I think people can read that about you. Anyway, when you come down here, what I want to know is the stuff that people are not, they can't go out and just read. I want them to meet Manny James.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So being a little off the cuff, being married for how long?
2014. It'll be 3 years coming up in about a month.
Okay, because the kind of songs you put out, you know you're grabbing women attention.
I know.
Okay,
I know,
so
I know.
how does wifey feel on that, man? What's
She's
the balance?
good. She's good. She know her position is solid. She know I ain't going nowhere. She know what it is.
Oh, so it is a team you got.
This is a team.
Okay,
I
mean a
very
team.
supportive.
So she's playing her position. You got others?
No. Try to set me up. Try to set me up for the round for him. Try to set me up for what you did. It's a one-woman team, brother. That was a good one, though. Man.
Nobody coming off the bench, man? Come on.
No. Ain't no bench.
We're starting 5?
No.
Listen, man.
Nope.
We don't want this to be a
Team of
posthumous
one.
work, man.
Team of one. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go home. Now you're me ducking bullets. Come on, man.
Oh, you gotta keep it. What? Ain't nothing better than a chick who pull a gun
Oh,
on
you already know.
Well, I'm trying
know.
to teach my wife how to shoot right now.
Mine is official.
Oh man, I'm like,
that.
listen, you know, gangster
She gonna get you. I'm gonna get you, and the dog gonna get you. I won't do that.
Oh man. So this soulful, this track. Which track is this, folk?
Good company.
Good Company.
Yeah.
Now that was dealt with a lot of visual effects and all that stuff. Tell me a little something about that. Now that was on your last project,
That
right?
was on my last project. That was
I
the
still
first
want to
single.
talk about it.
That was the first single. I respect it. That was the first single off the original project. I'm just being honest. I love it because it had like the '70s Motown soul vibe to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I really dug that, and it was the same thing, pretty much the same premise as Close to Me, just being in the presence of some good company.
Which brings me back to now. In that album, you had this the super dressed up. You know what I'm talking about. You had that look. You were on that. Which brings me back full circle. Now I'm still trying to get the real reason why you went to this laid back. Oh, is all of that you?
Right. Yeah. All of that is me.
All
of that is
I thought
me.
you were going to blame the label.
No. No, all of that is me, man. Like I said, I just wanted to get back to the essence of who I am.
Okay.
I wanted to get back to the kid that was sitting on the project steps, dreaming about being here now.
No doubt.
That's what's up. That's
So
what's
that's
up.
what we back to. We back
Now
to that. We back to the raw.
The label that you're with have a lot of sync licensing.
Yeah.
This is where your
Huge
product is in, movies,
videos,
videos, the whole rest of that.
Yeah.
You part of any of those projects? Or you got one coming up?
I'm being pitched to some things now.
Oh, okay, that's
So
what's up.
I can't speak on it.
Right,
until
no,
actually,
that's good. That's
you know
good.
what I mean?
That's cool. No, that's good.
Shouts to everybody checking in live too. What up, y'all? June,
right.
what's up, baby?
Who's that?
June.
June, what's up, June? I ain't gonna baby that one. I don't know how far that goes.
No,
man.
that's like my auntie. She from Church Street South, so I had to shout her out.
All right, shout out to Auntie and everybody else who's checking us out right now. on Facebook Live. My man Manny James is in the building.
Yeah.
Gonna come back on the other side and talk more with him. Let him hang out with us. That's cool.
Yeah, let's get it.
You good for it?
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
man.
around.
All right, man. Come back on the other side. We're gonna talk about my man Manny. Manny James, where he's going. I want you to really understand Manny James more than just the bio. How's that? Let's call this segment more than just the bio. Manny James in studio. Stay connected.
Yep.
Nice. Drop that exclusive, baby.
If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable, our space is set up to say nothing. That's why you're here with me. These sheets create limitations. Strip down when you're next to me. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable, it's okay if you're whispering something. It's clear what you're saying to me. Here you need no invitation, cause it's where you need to be. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 You ain't good situation. So go when you're next to me. You say that you want it, you show me you want it. I say that to say this to you, cause I'll give it all to you. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere.
Rob Nice, drop that exclusive, baby.
Feel that comfortable. You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable. Our space is set up to say nothing. That's why you're here with me. These sheets create limitations. Strip down when you're next to me. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable, it's okay if you're whispering something. It's clear what you're saying to me. Here you need no invitation, cause it's where you need to be. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere.
Rob Nice, drop that exclusive, baby.
Our space is set up to say nothing. That's all that we need to be. So go in a good situation. So go when you're next to me. You say that you want it, you show me you want it. I say that to say this to you, cause I'll give it all to you. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable. Our space is set up to say nothing. That's why you're here with me. These sheets create limitations. Strip down when you're next to me. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable, it's okay if you're whispering something. It's clear what you're saying to me. Here you need no invitation, cause it's where you need to be. You say that you want it, so show me you want it. I say that to say this to you. Let's do what we came here to do. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 Where? You ain't gotta go nowhere. 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 If you feel that comfortable. Our space is set up to say nothing. That's all that we need to be. So go in a good situation. So go when you're next to me. You say that you want it, you show me you want it. I say that to say this to you, cause I'll give it all to you. If you feel that comfortable, you ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere. You ain't gotta go nowhere.
Manny James.
Yeah.
Name of that track is You Don't Gotta Go Nowhere?
Comfortable.
Comfortable. Get comfortable, baby.
Okay, we got to talk about that.
Get comfortable.
We got to talk about that.
Get comfortable.
But first, I got to let you guys know about this place here in Hamden, 1447 Dixon Avenue in Hamden. It's called Quality Used Tires. Quality Used Tires have roadside assistance. And they can fix damaged rims. It's getting cold. You might want to put them winter tires on. I don't know how much your situation. Don't want to be slipping and sliding. I don't know what's it. But don't forget, people, they have Quality Used Tires. You better know that for sure. It's their name, Quality Used Tires, 1447 Dixon Avenue, Hamden. Yeah. The ugliness continues. Yeah. You got it all? Good. Anyway, the ugliness continues. The Unstoppable Joe Ugly got in the building, my man, Manny James.
What up?
He had to take a sip of water.
Yeah, I had to get the water.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Don't mess up your throat, man. You're a singer, man.
Get my vocal cords.
There you go.
My
Not
vocal
like
cords
me, man.
right. Yeah.
You don't want to drum your vocal cords. We don't need that.
No. Take it, sir.
You know what I'm saying? But anyway, name of this track that we just heard was what?
Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
And I said it was You Don't Want to Go Nowhere. Now, for an independent artist, and I'm very concerned about this because it's a great track, by the way. But for an independent artist, I often say that, well, first of all, let me ask you, why did you name it Comfortable?
I mean, it's the premise of the song.
I understand that, but for the independent artist and knowing that people are trying to find your music,
Right.
you know,
Right.
they're going to look it up. You don't want to go nowhere. Did you
Right.
tag it as such so they could find it?
I didn't, but I'm hoping that we play it enough, they'll understand the word of it, they'll understand the title of it, but we didn't tag it like that. Nah,
No.
not yet.
But just a little suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, knowing this independent game real well and how people look for music,
Right.
they usually look for the lyrics and the hook.
Right.
So just just a little word of
I
advice.
respect it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't gotta take it. Just a little suggestion.
All right.
And knowing your camp and how well you guys advance, you know, hope you guys just wrap your head on that one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I got
I don't
you.
like telling people what to do.
No.
I just give suggestions. You know what I'm saying? But I as an independent artist, and a good independent artist as yourself, an excellent. I could give you that much.
Appreciate that, bro.
I could definitely say, you know, I want to see things keep growing for you. And a track like this, which is really hot,
Yeah.
I don't want people missing it because they can't find it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You say it's women's season with that track. AKA cuffing season.
Yeah.
That's what I'd rather say it is.
Right.
And in case you don't know what cuffing season is, parents, we're not talking violence. As a matter of fact, we're talking about locking them down,
Yeah.
making something pop, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, so
I got my comfortable, so you know.
okay, so on that, what is the aim of this track? Is to get people to cuddle? What's the deal here?
The aim of the track is is basically saying to the person, listen, you good, you here, you might as well get comfortable, you're enjoying yourself, kick your shoes off, relax. Let's, have a good
Let
night.
me ask you a question.
Talk to
You
me.
got somebody up in the house.
Right.
You got to do all that talking back in this thing. I mean, it's got a storm going on outside. They don't know they got to stay here. I mean, come on. Isn't there a problem? I think you should be doing a Mentos commercial or something at that point, no?
Yo, this guy.
I mean, you don't got to go nowhere. I mean, it's snowing outside. Where you should go? Come on. Oh, where's it going?
Yeah,
guy? I don't know.
This song is for every situation. For every situation. Get comfortable. We're going to have a good time. We're going to do what we came in to do. You know what I mean?
Now we're talking right.
Self-explanatory. We're going to do what we came in to do.
You don't got to go nowhere.
Nowhere.
All right. Not even around the corner.
No. I got you. Whatever you need, I got you. It's here.
As a matter of fact, I knew you were coming over. I went over and bought this stuff before
There
you
it
got
is.
here.
There it is. I got your
Give me
little
one of them gold
toothpaste.
packets.
Right. Little toothbrush and all of that.
Now that I've got you alone close to me, get comfortable.
Yeah.
You ain't got to go nowhere.
Nowhere.
Man, let me ask you, man. Were you always a ladies' man?
We're on camera and we're live, so I'm going to say.
And you're married?
And
the
I'm
courthouse
married.
is right across the street.
And let's just say,
It's too close for you to be playing
let's just
games.
say I lived an interesting life.
There you go. Smart answer. Smart
You know what I'm
answer.
saying?
Oh, great answer. Give that man a round of applause.
I lived
Smart
an
answer.
interesting
Smart
life.
answer. What
Go on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A family feud, boy.
Really, especially since you're looking at, it's cuffing season. You don't need to be out here cuffing air because you're trying to.
Right. Right. Can't just answer that and might discriminate. That might incriminate myself.
So I asked earlier about your audience. You have a female audience, strong female audience. They come out to check you out.
Right.
And come on, not even once. You and the wifey never had an argument about this?
Nah, you know why? Because I make sure that she feels. She knows what it is. She knows. She knows.
Go do your thing. She pimping you.
Listen. You're probably right. You're probably right. That's possible.
Pimping ain't easy.
She want to know what. So, I mean, for me, I just try to make sure that she feels comfortable.
And that's most important. Man.
That's it.
That's good.
That's on me. That's on me to make sure that she knows, like, listen, this is part of the show. The ladies coming out.
Right.
That's what my audience, my main audience. That's what I
So don't be
cater
messing
to.
with the money.
Right. Right. Let me
Put
make
away
them
your
happy.
Vaseline and razor blades.
Heels back on.
Put on your heels.
But that
Let me make them happy, and
Go ahead.
let me make them happy, and we win it.
There
That's
you go.
it.
There you go. It's a
We
win-win
winning.
situation, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, you got to come in here and endure this nonsense,
Shout out to the ladies, though. Appreciate all y'all for supporting me,
Yeah.
coming out to my shows and all of that.
Keep hope alive, ladies.
Yeah.
Let this guy close this down. Keep hope alive. So you are a poet in your own right.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You are indeed a poet. When you listen to your lyrics, more than just this soulful energy you bring to it, you bring a level of poetry to it. Now, did you ever study any poetry, or do you have any? No, seriously. He looked at me like, Joe, where this going?
No. I respect it. I'm going to tell you why I respect it.
Go for it, sir.
I used to write poems when I was a kid.
Boom.
That's how I started writing songs. You hear
okay.
That's it.
Okay,
how I
so
really started.
That's what I literally hear that in your music.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Your lyrics are strong. It's like it has depth to it.
Right.
Would you write for any other artists?
I would love to.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I would love to. I have a few artists that I actually reached out to that I would love to write for. I mean, I definitely want my music to be heard, whether it's from me, whether it's through another artist. But when sometimes I hear other artists on the radio and I'm like, yo, I could write something dope for them. So definitely.
You reached out to some artists like whom?
Oh, my man Lamone.
Oh, okay, that's what's up.
Yeah.
You know, some brother who is like, there's a brother out there that's, I don't know if he's necessarily up your, but I like his approach.
Who?
That's Jedi. Did I say it right?
Jadena's dope.
Yeah, I like his approach to the game.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
it's very interesting.
I dig it.
I can even say the guy's name right, man. I'm gonna see it. This is what messes it up.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I think he's dope. I actually listen to his music. I actually have his album. I like his vibe. I like how he came different than everybody else does.
Correct.
It wasn't just like, oh, here comes another artist mumble rapping, and no, it wasn't none of that. So,
He really brought something. He brought something to the table.
His music is like a fusion too. It's like the '60s and the '50s and the '70s with the hip hop.
I'm connecting you and him.
Yeah.
This is exactly why, because you carry that soulful edge to you from the '70s.
Right.
You have that. You have that edge that said, I understand the block.
Right.
Churchy South, and then that will bring out anything.
Yeah.
You can't hide that.
Yeah.
Just Churchy South, be like, listen, girl, I know I got a gun in my hand. But
baby, let these bullets sink to that guy over there.
And then I'll be back, baby. You don't go nowhere. Get comfortable.
Hold on, baby, I got a handle.
I'm gonna handle this real quick.
Yeah. The police are coming, so I gotta go.
I'll see you later, man.
Here's a couple $1 for your taxi. Buy yourself something nice.
You must have dialed 911, girl, because I'm coming like the police.
Listen, man. I'm a lover and a fighter. You know what I mean?
Are you comfortable?
Better not snitch on me.
Number one. Under no circumstances.
Look, Manny James in the building. Manny, today's election day.
Yeah.
Across the country, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We got some big election Jersey, Virginia, those are big on my list. The gubernatorial races, those are big. But also here in the city of New Haven, we also got a good race going on. We got Mayor Hop, who what's your politics, man? Just curious.
Okay.
You don't have to if you don't want to. You got a career ahead.
Well, I'm not in New Haven anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So I don't really get it. I don't
So
get
you
to
don't
say
have
so
a
much.
voice in New Haven.
I mean, but I
That's
pay
what I'm
attention. You know.
You can pay attention. You
I
ain't
pay
got a voice.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, just messing
Not
with
at
you.
all.
No. He's like, oh, yeah, I do, Joe. I live in a neighboring town, and you guys got flow over. I can't be handling your overflow, Joe. Your problems are coming up. No,
I know what's going on. I pay
yeah.
attention. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. I would say to those out there, we're coming up to the 55 after the hour. And I want people to know that, you're asleep at the wheel. 50, thank you. 55 after the hour. Thank you, sir. Want people to know for a fact, they got to get out there and vote. I know. You had the broke bird over there.
The bird was sick.
Making a pigeon sound. Come on, man. Got me ducking and shit. Come on, man.
Manny, who you want to give a shout out, some big ups to, man? While you
Hey, I got to shout out the team, Patriarch, everybody on Patriarch. I got to shout out my neighborhood, my old hood, Church Street South, known to many as the Jungle. I got to shout out my family, everybody that's supporting me, the wife, my prince at home, man.
No, absolutely, the wife. The
Yeah,
wife, he shot
yeah,
her out big
Word.
time, man. You know,
Listen.
girl, I know it ain't easy.
It ain't.
I've been to one of his concerts,
It ain't.
girl.
I'm a little crazy.
I've seen all them
I'm a little
girls
bit
out
crazy.
there throwing themselves at him. Hi, Manny. Girl, I know what you going through.
You don't know she be waiting outside.
doing it, girl?
Girl, I don't blame you for playing limo driver.
You know. Shout out to everybody though, man. That's holding me down, that's supporting me, man. I
Whoa.
really appreciate
Whoa,
it, yo.
hold on just 1 second. What is
Talk
this?
to me.
Sam Cooke.
Yeah, medley.
Is
Oh.
this you doing the Sam Cooke? Who did this? Who did this?
That filter.
The
Who
film-
videotaped that?
Yeah.
My wife.
Your wife did.
She
Man, shout
videotaped
outs to
that.
wifey.
Word.
Yeah.
Ladies, fall back.
Word.
You need to go see this video, then you understand what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
You got to see this. Y'all, when I tell you, what? This is fire.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
you
was
gotta-
live. That was live at Rockwood Music Hall in the NYC. I had a show there. Me and my
No,
acoustic
what she
guitarist,
did
Ryan.
with that filter
that's
is
her.
nuts.
That's
her.
why they
That's
can't
different.
mess with her. She's
Yeah.
involved.
She's involved.
She like I'm
She's
around.
I thought she was just security and limo driver.
No.
A chick trying to talk
She
to
check all the
mic
boxes.
on him. Bow. I was recording the sound, you sucker.
Like, I put a new meaning to boom mic. Boom mic.
Play, I feel her.
No,
Word.
she stand up. She stand up.
Respect.
No, that's awesome. People,
appreciate
you
it.
got to check this out. It's called the Sam Cooke Melody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Manny James. Well, look up Manny James hyphen Sam Cooke Melody. Did I see that right?
Medley.
Medley. Okay, it looked like 2 L's from over here. I can't see that
Sorry,
far.
she dyslexic.
Put your glasses on, Joe.
I will, but it looks funny on camera.
It's the filter. It's the filter.
Listen, man, I'm American, baby.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all about the looks first. Then we worry about how it's functioning. I have cross-eyed if I have to, but I'm going to look good first.
Yeah.
Yo, this dude is funny, yo.
This is about America, baby. America. I'm living the American dream.
That's right.
It's all about the looks. And talking about the looks, well, ladies, I got to tell you, this man up here in the building, I interrupted your shout-outs. Who
Yeah.
else you want to shout out to?
I just want, like I said, shout out the team, man. Just shout out the team. Shout out all the radio stations, all the DJs that supporting me. I really need your support on this next project.
They don't count, man. They don't
Comes on
count.
the 10th. I gotta plug them. You gave me my airtime, so I gotta do what I gotta do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
11/10/17, the album drops. Church Street South.
Yes.
The name of the project, man. I need everybody to get it.
Hey y'all, this is Babz Rawls-Ivy, and you're listening to 103.5 FM WNHH.
Yeah, come on. Sitting at the party, rocking back and forth, acting like you divorced. Your legs from the dance floor. Girls are saying they want more. Fellas to get on the floor. Then somebody screams, it's got to be J. King on the scene. They know that I'm a party fiend, so of course I stay dressed Dolce Gabbana, Versace, yes. No, I have to impress. Can't come with nothing less than all of my gusto. Cats won the battle, but they don't know just which way I flow. You might be right, but don't you know that my game is tight? Got you right in my sights. Best believe all the hype. We're gonna rock tonight. Yo, can you meet me in a dance floor? You got too much. Yourself to the dance floor. Got all these shorties all screaming more. Got so
Good morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Sorry, Babz.
This is Welcome to Criminal Justice Insider. You know, we've been doing this show for quite some time. You think that we would know this in our sleep?
You would think.
Oh my Lord. Good morning. You know, if it's the first or third Friday of the month, you are tuning into Criminal Justice Insider on 103.5 FM WNHH. We are live streaming on the NewHavenIndependent.org, Facebook, and Twitter. Tune in and some other place. Good morning, Jeff Grant. Jeff Grant is the Executive Director of Family Reentry. How are you?
Good. We have to
say the show is beautifully and happily and wonderfully sponsored by the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
And Family Reentry.
Rebuild, restore, disrupt.
Yeah,
I like. That's the new one.
That's very right now resistant.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of anarchy in there. Absolutely.
I hear it.
Yeah.
So before we talk about who our wonderful guest is this morning, do a little housekeeping, check in and say how we're doing.
Yeah, things are good. You know, I'm sure we're going to talk with our guest Mike Lawler about the Governor's Criminal Justice Conference. That was a couple of days ago, which I attended, and you know, it's so easy in criminal justice to feel like you're in a silo, sitting in your office and tearing my hair out, you know, trying to get things done. And it's hard to feel part of the community sometimes. But this was a real gathering of the tribe, you know? I mean, it was a community that that showed up there, and from the governor on down to people in the trenches. So that was great. And two other things, I guess, coming up at Family Reentry on June 9th. We are the Connecticut partner for Lamborghini's first U.S. concert. He's a Nigerian musician and prison reformer. And
I saw all the flyby notes for that and the ads and the Facebook stuff.
Yeah, and I was interviewed on WNPR about it yesterday. So we're very happy to be the Connecticut partner for that. And if anyone wants to attend that, you go to Northfield Congregation Church's website, northfield.org, and tickets are free, but they would like you to donate because he has a wonderful charity in Nigeria where he supports youth in prisons there.
Okay.
So that'd be great. And also we have an event coming up in Stamford on June 13th, and information about that is on Family Reentry's website at familyreentry.org.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow, welcome, Mike Lawler.
Hi, Mike.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Our paths have intersected many times over the years in various capacities, which I bet you don't even remember.
Yeah, when you get to be my age, there's a lot you don't remember.
How are you?
I'm doing awesome.
So Mike Lawler became Undersecretary for Criminal Justice Policy and Planning in January of 2011. He's on leave of absence as a tenured Associate Professor of Criminal Justice in the Henry C. Lee College of Criminal Justice and Forensic Sciences at the University of New Haven. Prior to his appointment, Mike served 12. Oh Lord, I can't read this. Jeff sent this in his text.
Sorry.
And it's like small, because usually Jeff comes with a big old printout of things. So prior to his appointment, Mike served 12 terms as a member of the Connecticut House of Representatives.
Wow.
Representing his hometown of East Haven. I didn't know you were from East Haven.
Born and raised, but I live in New Haven now.
You do? You live in New Haven, really?
I do.
All right, welcome.
12 terms, Mike. That might mean you're older than me.
I'm 61. I'm pretty old.
61 too.
There you go.
There you go.
And as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mike played a key role in passing 2 amendments to Connecticut's Constitution.
Wow.
The first established explicit rights for victims. Jeff, this is tough.
Let's just go to Mike.
You can skip all that
I
stuff.
know, but I want to get these 2 pieces in because I think they're important. I can't get to them. So you've been doing criminal justice stuff before it was even popular or thought about or even spoken out loud in public spaces.
Yeah, I've been involved in this stuff in one way or another since 1980.
Wow. So what have you learned? Tell us what you've learned.
Oh, well, so that could be a long answer.
That could be the whole show.
Well, the thing is, I've learned that if you're going to have public policy, which is what I do now, you should have really clear goals, and you should be able to articulate what those are in a way that people can understand it. So here's our goals: reduce crime, reduce spending, restore confidence in the criminal justice system. And when I say restore confidence, I mean confidence among victims of crime who oftentimes go away thinking they did not get justice, confidence among African Americans and Latinos who frequently think the system is just not fair to them, and confidence among citizens as a whole who every day see these articles about police brutality and false confessions and wrongful convictions and misconduct by prosecutors and judges and probation and parole and correction officers and legislators and governors, for that matter, see them getting led out of their offices in handcuffs. And all of that together undermines confidence in the criminal justice system. And when people lose confidence, it leads to more crime. So goal number 1 is less crime. And I think it's fair to say that we've made a lot of progress here in Connecticut in achieving that goal.
Mike, it feels like criminal justice has come from out of the shadows in terms of a topic to dinner table conversation that people are having everywhere. It's in all the media and people are talking about it. And it feels like some of the things that you talked about in terms of wrongful prosecution, police brutality, all of that, it got more exposed as the conversation broadened generally in terms of criminal justice. And that cuts kind of both ways. 1, it allows you to actually instrument change, but 2, it's also out there in terms of transparency, and that means it's subject to public scrutiny.
Yeah, that's true. And so back in the day, when I was first involved in this stuff in the 1980s, really, criminal justice policy was a dinner table conversation, but it was pretty cut and dried. It was criminals should be in jail, no more, longer sentences, just get tough, war on drugs, etc. It was very simplistic, right?
But the 80s was a time when it was so much drug trafficking in communities, right?
The late
it was like
80s,
at the height.
Yeah.
It was like at the height of that drive-bys, drugs in communities. And so people were talking about it because they just wanted it to be over.
But it was a very simplistic conversation. It was just like, get tough, that'll solve the problem.
Put them away.
And in the legislature, just make the sentences longer and et cetera. So what's different now, Jeff, as you point out, is that people are talking about it very differently. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Transparency is one. I mean, now the ubiquity of video, whether it's body-worn cameras by police or surveillance camera in front of stores or cell phones that people are carrying around and pointing at situations, I think it opens people's eyes to things that maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago would be denied and swept under the rug. And even though a lot of the stuff we see on TV in terms of, let's say, police misconduct is a very small percentage of what's actually going on from day to day, when it happens, it's very visible and people react to it. And I think that changes the way people perceive this stuff. There's other stuff going on that changes the way. But, I mean, the good news is, for once, it's morphed into sort of a relatively nonpartisan discussion. I think people who are on the far right and the far left we saw Kim Kardashian in the White House with Trump the other day talking about sentencing reform, go figure. And but it is different now. And I'm involved in a lot of national conversations where you have rock-ribbed Republicans from the South who are either evangelical Christians or fiscal conservatives who feel very strongly that the criminal justice system is just completely out of control and needs to be ratcheted down. And of course, in the social progressive movement, where I tend to land most of the time, we're trying to accomplish the same goal. So in any event, the good news is we're making progress.
Yeah, it's expensive, and I think government sort of understands they can't keep building prisons and costing taxpayer money. I mean, it's expensive. I mean, Texas figured this out and sort of redirected their energy around how can we do this differently.
That's a fact. You know what's really expensive is bad policy.
Bad policy.
Because it does two things. If you get it wrong, you end up building a lot of prisons, and that's very expensive.
Yeah.
And if you get it wrong and you build a lot of prisons and lock a lot of people up, you're going to end up with more crime. Because what we know for sure is prisons are great universities for criminal behavior. And one of the reasons we're so focused here in Connecticut on finding ways to deal with younger people who are acting out, to keep them out of the criminal justice system altogether. And I think the results speak for themselves. You know, for at least 10 years, Connecticut's been completely rethinking the way it deals with young people who are creating problems. And so we see a lot fewer young people getting arrested, committing crimes, and certainly getting locked up in prison. So as I said, the good news is people are talking about it differently, and but sometimes you just got to keep talking about it before people really start thinking about it. So
you've had your hand in and deliberately had your hands in eliminating the patronage-ridden and corrupt county sheriff system. Rewriting.
I used to work there, by the way, just to be clear.
But here's the biggest thing for me: the turning over this domestic violence stuff, the enact number of the toughest states' domestic violence laws, and Connecticut has some of the most tough gun laws in the country, and that's under you.
Right. Well, I won't take all the credit for it, but I was certainly there as all those rules evolved over time. And, you know, we've gotten to the point now where if you're a responsible, law-abiding citizen, you can have firearms. I think it's a bad idea, but if people want to do it, that's fine. And as long as they are responsible and abide by the rules. On the other hand, it's very difficult to certainly legally get your hands on weapons in Connecticut if you are not a responsible or a law-abiding person. And that's one of the reasons we see a very dramatic drop in the number of suicides with firearms, homicides with firearms, accidents with firearms in our state, especially compared to the states where you can pretty much do whatever you want with guns. I mean, if you just follow the news, you'll see the concentration of all of that crazy stuff is happening in the South, where there tends to be no rules governing access to firearms, at least in the private marketplace.
So, Mike, before we get too much further, Babz, why don't we ask Mike kind of like what led him to all this? What his kind of
he's sitting right there. Ask him.
Yeah, but you're usually the one that asks that question, Babz.
Well, you know what? Because I'm so struck by the work that he has done on a lot of this legislation that we enjoy. And he got us out on the forefront, particularly around domestic violence. And he was really one of the first people to talk about we have to do juvenile justice differently.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that was a different conversation. And because we know that we can't just lock kids up and throw them away anymore. We've got to sort of do some other things around supporting them and helping them become productive citizens. So tell us, how did you get to this work? Tell us about you, the man, Mike Lawler.
Mike Lawler, the man.
The man.
There you go. So,
how was you raised? Where you come from?
How long is this program? Like an hour? Well, I mean, I could talk about why I was interested in criminal justice stuff. So, for starters, ever since I was a really young child, I always wanted to get involved in politics and government. So that's a given, right? I'm talking about wearing around an LBJ for president hat in 1964 when I was like 7 years old. So we're talking about.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. And you know, we're coming up in a couple of days on the anniversary of Bobby Kennedy's assassination, and I remember very clearly coming down. I was like in 7th grade or something, and he was killed. Excuse me, he was killed overnight, as you might recall, in Los Angeles. And my mom told me at the breakfast table, and I was still get choked up talking about it.
Of course.
So I always wanted to get involved in politics, and I figured law school would be a good way to get that thing started. And when I was in law school, you know, I wanted to be
Where'd you go?
I went to George Washington University down in D.C. And So, but here's an interesting thing. In 1980, so in college and grad school, I studied Soviet Russian studies. that's what I did, and I spent a lot of time over there. And
Where'd you go to undergrad?
UConn.
Okay.
UConn.
All right.
And,
Huskies, go.
Go Huskies.
Exactly. Got it. And I went to grad school in London, studied the same stuff, and I did a Fulbright thing in Hungary, and I just spent a lot.
I did not know that about you.
Yeah, I did a lot of time in Eastern Europe and Russia, the Soviet Union, all that thing. And never on the government payroll.
I was
Just to
going
be
to say,
clear,
are you going to get called?
I did go through the whole CIA thing, but I didn't end up working for them. But that's a whole other story. But
that you'll admit.
That's another show.
Correct. That I'm allowed to talk about.
That's criminal justice after dark.
In 1980, while I was going to school in London, a friend of mine and I, she had gone to UConn with me, and we were going to school in London, and we were visiting family of hers in Poland. Now, this is right before Solidarity happened, you know, still communist government. And so I ended up getting arrested for taking photos of people standing in a meat line, got stuck in prison, got interrogated. And
really?
Oh, yeah. And so there's nothing like sitting in a jail cell in another country where you're, and by the way, I was being interrogated in Russian, which is also a bad idea if you're not completely fluent in the language. But nonetheless, you know, I mean, you understand that you have no right to anything at that point. There is no bail. There's no court hearings. The cops put you in jail. That's that. And so I was only there for a day, but you know, you're sitting there. This could be a day. This could be a decade. You don't know.
It's Kafkaesque.
And that was interesting. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, I ended up working in the summer for the sheriff's department here in Connecticut, and you know, put handcuffs on people, took them to prison and stuff like that. And you know, I got to watch a lot of criminal trials, and that was an eye opener, I think. And then I decided I'd like to be a prosecutor. I was actually a public defender down in D.C. in law school, and if you're a public defender, you know, you have an ethical obligation to do everything you can think of to get your client the best possible deal. And sometimes your clients are very sympathetic, and you just feel like you want to help them out. Other times you have clients that you think probably should be in prison, but either way, you end up begging prosecutors to do what you're ethically obligated to ask them to do. And I figured, you know, why not just become a prosecutor and get to make the decisions yourself, right?
Wow,
and if you think someone should go to prison, send them to prison. If you think someone deserves a break, give them a break. And so that's what I wanted to do, and I ended up working not far from the studio at the courthouse here in New Haven, and did that for 3 years. It was, you know,
grueling.
I wouldn't say it was grueling. I was fascinating. I mean, it was, you know, I unlike these days, we did a lot of trials, a real lot in that courthouse, and I think I did 15 jury trials to verdict in the space of a year and a half.
Wow!
And by the way, I mean, they're virtually. I mean, here's a question for you. Last year in Connecticut, about 90,000 criminal cases got disposed of in our GA courts, the lower level of the courts where the vast majority of cases are handled. You want to guess how many cases got resolved with a trial? I'm talking about guilty, not guilty, court trial, jury trial, doesn't matter. You want out of 90 plus though? 200. Yeah, we were close actually. It was a little over 100, but I think it was 106 last year. And so there's and this is the whole state, not just New Haven. And so there's almost no trials anymore, and that leads to a lot of bad outcomes.
Does that bother you?
It does. You know why? Because if there's no trials, I think the people who work in the court, the judges, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, sort of get rusty, or maybe have never done one in the first place, and they get intimidated about doing one. They feel it's too time consuming. They put all the pressure on the plea bargaining process, get people to plead guilty, and the police never end up having to testify. There's no motions really until there's a trial, and if there's no trials, there's never any motions hearings, and so the police are never testifying under oath. And people could potentially get sloppy because they'll know they'll never be cross-examined about their police reports, and all of this kind of gets to the point where everything is driven by the money bail system, which is certainly the case at the moment, and plea bargaining. And there's a lot of pressure on people to plead guilty, including the way to get out of prison is to plead guilty and get probation or time served. And there's a lot of people who at least say they're pleading guilty not because they are guilty, but because it's the way to get out of jail. And so I'm not saying that in an accusatory way. I'm just saying that's kind of the way it is at the moment. And undoing that is complicated, and it's a big challenge.
Are you up for it?
Yeah. So I mean, we've made some progress in that regard in terms of bail reform in Connecticut. The governor proposed something. It ended up getting watered down because the bail bondsmen are a pretty organized lobbying group here and around the country. But around the country, including in state Supreme Courts around the country, the whole system of money bail is under attack, we're the only country in the world that has private bail bondsmen getting people out of jail. I mean, this is very unusual. As we sit here today, about 25% of the 13,000 plus people locked up in prison are there because they can't come up with the money to get out.
Yeah.
Including a lot of people where the money bail is relatively low, and if they had a job or a credit card or a family or anything, they would be out. So these are the kinds of things that lead to bad outcomes, unintended consequences. So unpacking that is, as I said, complicated, but whether I'm in the job I'm in or when I'm back at the University of New Haven, there'll still be an opportunity to work on systems reform, and I'm optimistic things will progress.
So you were part of the 10-member bipartisan committee to hear the hearings on whether or not to impeach the governor, Rowland. What was that like? What was your life like at that time?
Well, it was pretty interesting. I was never a big Rowland fan, just to be clear, although he did end up signing a variety of criminal justice proposals that I thought were big steps in the right direction. For example,
why weren't you a fan
of Rowland? Well, I could go through the stories, and for what it's worth, when I'm done with this job, I'm going to be writing a lot of this stuff down, and so
okay,
I have to buy the book, I guess. But
I'm waiting for that.
But Rowland was interesting. Like, he was smart, right? But it was very much a frat boy kind of mentality, and I think like me, he grew up in middle class, lower middle class family. And I think when he got exposed to the lifestyle of being in Congress and then as governor, I think he developed a sense of entitlement, like he should be getting all the good stuff, right? And obviously we know what happened with the renovations at his cottage that got paid for by state contractors. And so, like, one, I think as it turned out, Exhibit A, both in the impeachment process and in his prosecution, was the construction of Connecticut Juvenile Training School, CJTS, which I strenuously opposed as a legislator, and ended up being constructed. And I don't know if people know the whole story with that, and I'll try and boil it down since you asked the question. But the deal was we had a 100-year-old facility called Long Lane in Middletown.
I know that facility.
And
I don't know it personally. I just know it.
There you go. Well, it was, picture like an old orphanage with a high security kind of jail thing connected to it. And it was just completely inappropriate for juveniles. Kids were committing suicide. They would head out the window and run across the lawn and get out. So we had to do something different. And so most of the advocates, including myself, felt that what we should do is follow the lead of other states who have built these really small, local, secure facilities. And we're talking about like 10, 12 beds, like in New Haven and Hartford and Bridgeport, where almost all these kids come from, keep them connected to their families and to their schools, as opposed to one big prison-like facility.
You were way ahead of your time.
Yeah. there was a lot of people talking this stuff back then, and Rowland was insistent that we had to build this big thing, and the reason for it was his buddy Tommaso, who was this contractor, and he ended up getting convicted and going to prison for the same deal. Were friends with some architect who had designed this youth prison out in Ohio, in Marion, Ohio, and basically they flew the team from Connecticut out that was supposed to pick the design. They just took them right there, including Tommaso, showed them this thing. They said, that's it, this is good. The architect basically photocopied his design, and they built the same exact thing in Middletown.
Wow.
And if you look at the aerial photos of the two things, they look identical. Because believe me, I've done it. And but the thing was, it's a 250-bed maximum security prison is what they built for juveniles. The windows are about 3 inches wide and about 2 feet high. It's just so they're like slots. But the thing is, it was built on a design that Ohio had used for a facility that held kids up to age 21, actually, who had been adjudicated in the juvenile system, but some of them were 18, 19, 20 years old. That was not the case here. At the time, our kids were under 16, right? So that's where had juveniles. When it came time to open it, all the interior cells had no windows, and under federal law, you can't put a juvenile in a facility, in a cell that doesn't have natural light. So right off the bat, 100 of the 250 cells couldn't even be used. And then immediately, because there were so many kids in there, there was fights, and the staff were assaulting the students. There was all this drama, and it was just a bad idea. And by the way, the facility upon which this was based in Ohio closed in 2009 for that exact reason. There was abuses by the staff. There was riots by the kids. It was just a terrible design.
Oh, the architect, everybody should have went to jail.
They did all go to prison, including Rowland, and because he was getting all these kickbacks as a result of giving the contract to these guys. And this is not my opinion. This is what he got convicted of.
Sure.
And so now that thing had sat there until a few months ago when Governor Malloy finally closed it. And now we're in the process of developing what we had advocated for 25 years ago, which are small, locally based, staff secure, and some locked facilities for these kids that will not look like an adult prison, which is exactly what CJTS looks like. So in any event, things are changing, and that, if you want an example of why I have no respect for former Governor Rowland, that would be at the top of the list.
So when you were doing the inquiry, did you have a sense already when you all started doing this inquiry about whether or not to impeach Governor Rowland? Did you all come with the understanding that you already knew you were going to find stuff? Was it a strong feeling, or did you think, well, you know what, we're just going to follow where it goes and see what happens?
Well, it was pretty clear to me how it was going to end up. Let me just say that. But the beauty of this process, and we may be seeing this play out at the federal level soon too, is that at least in Connecticut, the House of Representatives votes to impeach, which is like an indictment. And then if you do get impeached, you go to the Senate for a trial, right? So you need a majority vote in the House, but in the Senate, to convict and remove from office, you need a 2/3 vote. And it's essentially the same thing in Congress. But the impeachment committee, the committee of inquiry, which was organized, I think the brilliance of it was equally divided, Democrats and Republicans, 5 and 5. And there was 2 co-chairs, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. The Republican chair was Representative Arthur O'Neill, who's still in office, for whom I have a lot of respect. He's very conservative. He and I don't agree on a lot of things, but he took that job very seriously. And I think some of the Republican leaders, certainly most of the Republican leaders at the time, recognized that there was a, as they said in Watergate, a serious cancer on the governorship at that time. And we hired a top-notch lawyer and an investigator to work with him. We gave them a pretty much an unlimited budget. And that was really the first time I saw the power of data collection. They were able to assemble electronically all the records of phone calls and emails and documents, and you were able to scan it looking for words. And they were able to sort of reconstitute pretty much everything Governor Rowland did every day. And once you had done that, it was pretty clear he was in trouble. And as is almost always the case, the Governor Rowland resisted our subpoena to come and himself testify. That case went to the state Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in the favor of the committee of inquiry, said, Governor, you're going to have to go and testify in front of the committee, and he resigned the next day. And my sense is, assuming the Trump presidency doesn't get to its final day, that's how that will end. I mean, he'll be forced to answer questions. And
does it feel the same to you when you look at that at that level?
Yes.
Does it feel very much like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Mike, where were you in your trajectory at that point? Because a lot of people probably don't know that if you're in the legislature in Connecticut, you still have to have a job, right? You still have to make money. So where were you in your life at that point, and what were you doing?
So I got elected in 1986, and in 1986 I was a prosecutor working for the state. When I announced my candidacy, I was told that if I didn't resign immediately, they would fire me on Friday. So,
really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And there was editorials in the New Haven Register and the Hartford Courant. The Hartford Courant was the first time I ever got my name in the Hartford Courant. It was in an editorial. It was in the first line. It says, "Who does Michael P. Lawler think he is?" ? That's how it started. And
you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I think I saw another article like that last week.
So, but in any event, I had to resign. The good news is, almost immediately I got a job in East Haven in a small law firm and worked there for 4 years, and then I went to a different firm here in New Haven, worked there. But, it's tough to be a legislator and a practicing attorney for a lot of reasons. And so ultimately, I got out of the active practice law, started teaching part-time at the University of New Haven. I was working part-time in a small company in East Haven, owned by a guy who was one of my predecessors in the state legislature from East Haven, John Giordano. And the part-time gig at U of H turned into a full-time gig starting in 2000, and I really enjoyed that a lot. It was very compatible with being a legislator. They would shift.
So what is it about you about teaching, and what are you teaching?
Well, I teach criminal justice, law, and policy stuff there. And, UNH, people around here are probably generally familiar with it.
Sure.
It has grown. I mean, it has an international prestige now.
And, the president, Steve Kaplan, took over like 11 or 12 years ago, and he really turned that place around. And I just like teaching young kids and sort of getting them as they're coming into, these are all kids who want to major in criminal justice and be cops and FBI agents and probation officers or whatever. and just help them understand the power that the criminal justice system has. Like, for example, one of my favorite courses to teach is criminal law. You just learn all the different criminal laws, and kids take this in their freshman year. And so I on the first day of class, I always say to them, I say, okay, now all these kids want to be cops and stuff, right? So I say, how many of you have committed a felony in your life? And they laugh, right? And I say, no, I am serious. And usually like one kid will raise his hand. And I said, I'm not going to ask you what it was. I'm sure it's like drugs or something. And I say, well, look, by the time we're finished going through all the criminal laws that exist, you'll have a hard time counting up the number of felonies you have committed in your life. And I want you to remember that, because at some point you're going to be in a position where you get to decide how to deal with certain situations. And if you view the world as divided into two parts, criminals and everybody else, then you're making a big mistake. There's just a lot of shades of gray out there. And you need to understand that that perspective. And if you think it's like just cops and robbers, good guys and bad guys, you're making a big mistake, and you're not going to fit in, or you're not going to be effective at your job. So I like that. I like talking to young kids. And University of New Haven is not like Yale, as everybody's coming in with trust funds and stuff like this. A lot of kids first in their family going to college, and there's a lot of pride in that. You can see in the parents' eyes when they drop their kids off. So I like it.
Have you ever read Harvey Silverglade's book, 3 Felonies a Day?
No.
It's fascinating. He's in the Alan Dershowitz disciple up in Boston or Cambridge maybe, and he wrote a book how the average citizen in this country commits at least 3 felonies a day.
Oh yeah, my brother Kevin, he's the state's attorney in Milford. He's has a saying. He's said this for years, and it's really true. He goes, "You pick any little old lady walking down the street, let me follow her around for a week, and I get her at least 1 felony." And,
I love that.
Well, it's true. I mean,
it's terrible.
And
I love that.
Like I have kids in, the kids when they laugh at you when you say, "Well, I just start rolling out examples of felonies." Like, for example, tax fraud. So you ever work as a waiter or a bartender? Did you report all your tips, every penny of it? Because if you didn't, when you sign that thing at the bottom, say this is all income from whatever source derived. So now, granted, people don't get prosecuted for that, but they could.
Yeah,
and Al Capone went to jail for tax evasion,
right?
So
right.
So I mean, if the forces of the state or federal government turn on you, when they start poking around, Donald Trump and John Rowland both learned this lesson. And Trump hasn't learned it yet.
I don't think Rowland learned it.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, the feds have a recidivism problem, apparently. But
don't say that to us.
No, I know.
Oh no, I'm never. Oh, listen, you don't have to worry about me ever.
Well, it's funny. When Rowland ran, I guess we're going on a rant about Rowland.
Well, it's such an interesting story to have so much to rise. And then to sort of take that crash and then take the crash again.
Yeah. When he ran for governor in 1994, which was the second time he ran, one of his campaign promises was, if elected, I will operate the Department of Correction for half of what we're paying now.
Wow.
And when people say, well, like, how are you going to do that? He goes, I'm going to privatize the whole thing. And the good news is he figured out pretty quickly that's really, really, really a bad idea. And but he also said, the problem in Connecticut is the wrong people are afraid. And that was like clearly a race baiting kind of Trumpist type soundbite, and that stuff went on. When he got elected, that was my first time as chair of the Judiciary Committee when he was beginning as governor, and he proposed a whole bunch of draconian stuff, which was pretty. They were just talking points off of campaign propaganda, and not really thought out. Like making the death penalty, quote unquote, workable, this kind of stuff. And it was ridiculous. And I mean, they put no thought into it. It was very knee jerk. And there was not a whole lot of substance there.
But were you stunned by, it's one thing for people to sort of say that, but are you stunned by the people who get in line behind that? See, that's where it freaks me out, with the people that get behind that thinking in mass, you know?
Well, I mean, so we see that going on right now in our country, right? There's people are buying into a lot of this stuff on Twitter and Facebook. A lot of it's coming right out of the Kremlin but people are susceptible to this. But what really bothers me is when political leaders do it, and people who should know better. And I think a lot of that is motivated by the need to get. And I'm speaking as a politician. I had to run every year in East Haven, which was I had serious opponent every single one of the 13 elections I was in. And, you know, it's easy to get scared. And especially if you don't know what you're talking about, it's easy to just gravitate towards the simplistic stuff. And so whether it's the death penalty or the sex offender registry or, you know, gangbangers or drugs in school zones or whatever, you know, the easy thing is to say, yeah, we should get tough. But almost all of those things have lots of unintended consequences, and principally they actually result in more crime if you don't get it right. And that's why it was so frustrating when Roland, who had talked a good game about criminal justice stuff, you know, there was no there. He had no key person who understood the system. And actually the job I have right now didn't even exist until the legislature mandated it. I think it was like 2006, 2007. And little did I know I was crafting the language that would require a job, like someone being a job that does criminal justice policy and planning, that I'd end up there, but worked out good. And but I mean, it's really important to know what you're talking about. It's not even a philosophical thing. It's just, if you know what you're talking about and you're able to reach out to people on the front lines. You know, my experience has always been in Connecticut and around the country, if you get prosecutors and judges and defense attorneys and corrections and sheriffs and all the criminal justice players in a room together, even though they philosophically disagree about a lot, when it comes to what would make the system work better, there's a lot of consensus.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of resentment towards what politicians say and do that makes all their jobs more complicated. And so finally we've gotten to the point where we're going to the front lines, talking to the front. And half of the reason we had that conference the other day at the prison was to bring judges and prosecutors, defense attorneys, others together to get them to start to collaborate.
I think it worked. I think
it definitely worked.
It's a great launch.
The Sentencing Commission here in Connecticut is another example of that, and you heard Judge Devlin talk about it.
Yep.
And by the way, the video of that event is on CTN right now, at least the plenary sessions. And we had a camera crew from the Council of State Governments working with us to video the entire thing. And the interesting thing about that is the young men who were working the technology there were, they call it echoes of incarceration or something like that. They're children of people who were incarcerated, who are now working on criminal justice reform and using video to tell the story. So,
Mike, while we have you here, and because at Family Reentry we're specifically interested in appropriate funding for programs. We're a program-based agency. We do some advocacy, but our core is programs on the street. Frontline. I want to make sure that we talk about the state of justice reinvestment, and here in Connecticut, and why it makes so much sense to be investing in our communities, and yet the money doesn't seem to wind up in the places that it could to best serve as a disruption point for people entering the justice system, and then when they re-enter from prison to actually help them get a good restart.
So I think, as everybody knows, we're in the middle of a continuing budget nightmare here in Connecticut, and every part of state government has gotten whacked pretty good. I mean, there's a lot fewer state employees. Obviously, the prison system is a lot smaller, and aid to towns is, by duct tape and is being like flat funded. I mean, basically, it's not going up, but at least it's not going down that much. But as you point out, the easiest places to cut are the places where you can cut, and that tends to be the discretionary spending involving community type programs. So there's been a lot of across the board reductions there, and it's very unfortunate. I mean, it's not like there's many alternatives, and we see, Project Longevity's gotten a big cut. That's an important thing here in New Haven. The Sentencing Commission got zeroed out in terms of their state funding. So things like that are happening across the board, all of which are unfortunate, right? And certainly they're not being reduced because they're not worth the investment. So let's say that for starters. Secondly, I do think that continuing to focus people's attention on the kinds of investments that actually work versus make things worse. So we do spend a lot of money on things that clearly, at least in my opinion, are not very effective. Let's just take, for example, the sex offender registry. It costs a lot of money to do that. There's really no evidence that that's reducing crime or anything like that. So, I mean, I understand why it's there. I voted for it as a legislator. But, I mean, there's a lot of things like that where it's not really, you can't really see the tangible benefit that you get in terms of public safety. On the other hand, there's a lot of things like you're describing, the reentry programs. It's pretty clear. And some of them are very good. Others don't seem to be very effective. But it's a struggle. And, you know, let me single out one in New Haven because I live here. I know New Haven better. Emerge, which is down the street here on Grand Avenue. They're great. I mean, they take guys coming out of prison. Sure. They match them up with jobs. I mean, they're able to, like the guys planting the trees throughout New Haven. I don't know if you see it's, what's it called? URI. I mean, a lot of those guys are working for Emerge. A lot of the people deconstructing these houses that need to be torn down, they pull out the plumbing and stuff like that, work for Emerge. And so they get paid for that. And it's combined with sort of a therapeutic community type approach with these guys. And the reason I bring it up is when we were in the prison the other day, we had one of the guys who's a foreman at Emerge, who's been out for 11 or 12 years, was invited as an attendee, and he participated in all the sessions. And when we were in the True Unit, where you got a bunch of lifers matched up with younger offenders, you know, as mentors, and this guy whose name is Roger Johnson, he said to me, I recognize that guy over there. And that guy over there had been asking me earlier, this inmate doing a very long sentence. He says, you know, I'm worried that when I finally get out, you know, the world has changed so much since I've been in. I hope there's things that help me readjust to the community, get a skill, and blah blah blah, learn how to use a phone, or you know, and I said, you need to talk to Roger Johnson. And when I put them two together, Roger had served time with this guy.
Wow.
And it was very interesting. And you could see in the guy who was doing the long sentence, there was some hope. He could see that there were some programs, and replicating that throughout the state, 100% of the time it's appropriate, is a real challenge. But I think those stories, me telling them, you telling them, the presentation yesterday at our CJPAC meeting.
Fred Hodges did I thought, brilliant job.
Awesome job. And people can watch that on if you go to CTN, you know, the legislature's TV network, and you look for it's called CJPAC meeting on Thursday, May 30th, I guess it was yesterday. You can watch Fred's entire, which was lengthy, but it was meaty, it was substantive, and people need to hear that.
Well, believe me, Mike, we'll be blanketing social media with that link.
Awesome, do that.
So you're doing all these things. What's next for you? Nobody's calling you to be governor.
Oh no,
no one's wooing you for the big chair.
Yeah, Mike Lawler for governor.
Yeah,
I kind of like it. You're
like
smart.
it too.
No.
You're smart. You're worldly. You're well read. Why not?
I'm looking forward to going back to teaching full time. I can wear jeans to work. Kind of get the summers off, and you could still be involved in a lot of stuff. And the good news is
why not you for governor?
You know,
seriously,
you got 12 terms, Mike.
All the best people don't want to seem to want this job.
Yeah, that's actually true. But you know, I kind of have had my fill of it. You know, and I'm probably speaking out of school a little bit, but you know, I think if you're, and I won't say what I was about to say because it's probably a bad idea, but let me just say this: I think over time. The way the legislature works, the way state and federal government works has gotten a little bit dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating to be trying to solve problems with people who don't seem to be interested in solving a problem. And like, I have these 3 criteria for politicians I respect. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. It's like smart, actually give a shit, not crazy. And and
so there's a lot of 2 out of 3, right?
Not as many as you'd hope, but I mean, there's not a lot of people who score high on all 3. And like I named a Republican who I feel that way about, like Art O'Neill. It would be an example of that. I don't agree with him on policy stuff, but if we had more people like Art O'Neill and you know, there's the guy who took my place.
I don't know. People are texting me saying, "Why aren't you running for governor?" Like what? Because you meet your own criteria.
I'm a little bit burnt out but what I was trying to say is, like, it's hard to, you know, maybe I just need a sanity break. I don't know, but
take a break. Go visit the vineyard or somewhere. And
I want to do a shout out for the guy who took my place in the legislature from East Haven, James Albus, would be another guy who scores very high. And there's a number of them, but not enough in the legislature in either party. And that's it's I've had enough.
Are you ready to write a book?
Oh yeah. Tell us about your book.
Nope. I'm not talking about it in any detail until I'm out of this job.
I understand that.
But it'll be interesting.
Well, do you have an agent yet?
Nope. No, we have ethical rules. We're not allowed to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
When I'm out of office, I can do stuff.
I apologize.
Right now, I mean, if you talk to Malloy, he's January 9th is his end date.
Was that right?
Yeah, that was the last day.
Did you like him? Do you like him as a governor?
I like him a lot. And in terms of smart, actually give a shit, not crazy, he scores extremely high on all three scales.
Why do you think he's getting a bad rap all the time?
I think, if one of the hardest things to do in politics is to tell it like it really is. And although Donald Trump claims to do that, which he doesn't,
that's reality show foolishness.
I know. I'm not sure he even knows what it really is, but Malloy does, and he is as smart as they come. And the problem is, if you're not prepared to just tell people what they want to hear all the time, you're going to get to be really unpopular.
Yeah.
And all the options to deal with the problems we have are all really painful. They're all going to be really unpopular. You just got to pick the best one, and I think he's done that. And a lot of other people just decide it's safer for them politically just to criticize him, and that goes for people in both parties. And I'm very confident when the history of these last 8 years is written, this guy will come out very highly.
I feel the same way. I think the way you think. I think he gets a bad rap because I think he came in and he didn't do what most other folks have done. Just give people a sense of, let me just tell you what you want to hear, and you can go back and do your thing.
That was his predecessor.
Well,
yes.
He's had to deliver a lot of tough news.
Yeah. There's no question, and and it is worth noting. And I was in the legislature for this whole time, so I share part of the blame for this. What he was handed when he came into office was.
And people forget that part.
Was a kind of sandwich, which I probably shouldn't talk about, even though I've already used the word once on this twice on this program. But yeah, I mean, it was tough, and to get out of that hole is really painful. But somebody had to do it. He did it. I give him a lot of credit for it. Like just take the death penalty for example. When he first ran for office, he was very clear: if I'm elected governor and the legislature puts a death penalty repeal on my desk, I'm signing it. And no ifs, ands, or buts. No avoiding the question. He did that on a lot of issues. He got elected not once but twice. It wasn't easy, and he followed through on those things. And in the criminal justice realm, the thing I know best, there's nobody in this country, there's no governor in this country that's got more to show for their time in office in terms of criminal justice. I'm not just talking about the fact that there have been reforms, I'm talking about the outcomes that have been achieved as a result. We've got the lowest prison population we've had in 24 years and dropping. And we've been closing prisons left and right, not because we're letting people out early, but because there's fewer people coming in the front door. And the best part of all this news, the best part by far, is there's fewer and fewer young people getting arrested, ending up in prison. And that's dropping every single year. And just to give you an idea of the scale, I went through the statistics at the event the other day. If you look at 18-year-olds getting arrested compared to 2009, it's down 65%. 65%. 18-year-olds getting arrested. If you look at kids between the ages of 18 and 21 in prison, it's also down 65% since 2000. It went from 2,100 down to about 800 right now, and dropping it. And that's like the farm team for the adult prison system. That's the school to prison pipeline. And when the story of the governor's criminal justice legacy is really told, that will be the highlight. The fact that he figured out a way to implement policies that have clearly demonstrated there's a lot less crime, which was our goal number one. We're spending a lot less money on running prisons, which was our goal number two. And I think over time, we will have restored people's confidence in the criminal justice system.
So, Mike, I can tell you in the criminal justice community, or at least in the nonprofit community, everyone's concerned that there's not enough money to run programs, and so and whether or not that's a legacy issue, and it's an on-the-ground problem right now. And so there's a lot of blame, and there's a lot of things, and that's kind of understandable. It's human nature. But to a person within at least the executive directors of nonprofits around the state, everyone says, oh my God, what if we get someone who's not criminal justice friendly next time? How, what is that going to look like?
Well, people ask this a lot, right? And based on what I've seen around the and just to be clear, I've been involved in a lot of national stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
And meeting with John Wetzel, who spoke at the.
Yeah, John's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He's a Republican. Was appointed by a Republican governor. He's a career corrections guy. Looked like he played offensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's a big, huge African American, gregarious guy. But I mean, he's a Republican, and he and his colleagues around the country, corrections directors in Mississippi and Alabama, especially in Texas. I mean, they have religion on this stuff. They realize you get much better outcomes. You save a lot of money. The staff is happier. The staff is safer. The inmates are safer. The inmates are motivated, and to reverse these trends is going to cost you a lot of money, and you're going to get a lot more crime. And I think out of office, I'm sure I will certainly be doing it, but if anybody tries to ratchet back these things, make it very clear to them, there will be more crime because of what you're doing. There will be more failures, and it's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's really crazy. And for what it's worth, we got people like Grover Norquist, who's, I don't know if you know him. But
I've met him, actually.
Yeah, so Norquist and a bunch of real fiscal conservative Republicans are advocating for this down in Congress. I mean, the Senate and House leaders, the chairs of the committee, who are very Republican, they're very Republican, they're all for this stuff. And so I think the momentum is so strong, the roots are planted so deeply, it's going to be hard to pull this stuff out, and you'd be insane to do it. So maybe they won't do it because they feel strongly it's the right thing to do, but I think they'll be afraid of the consequences if they undo this stuff.
Just another pitch for justice reinvestment. One of the things that Pennsylvania has, and Secretary Wetzel has out there, they have a real justice reinvestment law in the books where they have a formula that actually, for money that gets saved from the justice system, actually goes back into the communities. Yep. So I'd be advocating a hard look at that in Connecticut.
That would be great. I think it would be good. And whether it would survive a budget situation we're doing,
sure.
I mean, a lot of funds get swept and stuff. It's all inside baseball stuff. But I mean, the concept is valid, right?
Yeah.
If we don't need to build prisons, we're saving a lot of money. And why don't we just reallocate some of that money to the things that are driving down crime rates and incarceration rates? And so, makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Wow. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Great.
I learned a lot about you, Mike Lawler, that I did not know.
Oh, there's more.
Well, they have to come back.
You have to come back. Talk to us a little bit more.
It gets me out of work. I'm happy to come here. I live in New Haven. This is easy schlep.
This is a great show. We'll give this one a 9.5.
There you go.
So if y'all just tuned in, we're about to leave. You've been listening to Criminal Justice Insider. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy, and this is Jeff Grant on 103.5 FM WNHH, live streaming on New Haven Independent, Twitter, Facebook. The show is happily supported by the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
And Family Reentry.
Rebuild, restore, disrupt.
I don't know, Mike Lola. I think you ought to be governor.
Oh.
Maybe not this term. I'm going to let you take a break.
Oh, we didn't say hello to Andrew Kaplan.
Hey, Andrew Kaplan.
Hey, Andrew.
We love you.
And love you, Babz. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. I love this show. We get to talk to some of the coolest people.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to start that rumor. Mike Lawler running for
No,
governor.
don't do it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. Brian Slatery, we on our way out.
Thanks, Brian.